interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
All right, guys, we're back for another podcast. This is number 2. It's only been over a year, but I've got Dave Lee in the garage because we can't use the lounge room due to COVID-19, and my sister's out there doing work, and my dad's in another room doing work, so we've got the garage.
And thanks for having me on.
No, you're welcome. We're going to be talking about China today. So Dave's going to explain his channel and what he talks about on YouTube.
I guess if you search it, you can search Dave Lee China, then it'll pop up right at the top. I guess we're going to talk about my favorite topic, China.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep, I'm keen to.
I guess we could just start from the beginning.
Yeah.
If that's cool.
Yeah.
Maybe jump in whenever you want, because if you get me talking, I just keep going forever.
Well, I'd like to know, when you started your channel and why you started focusing on China. When it come to your attention that this should be a discussion.
Yeah.
And maybe start about when you started the channel.
Myself, people have different ways of seeing the world, and myself, I'm a big picture thinker. So that's just how I am. Some people are big picture thinkers. Some people are good at focusing on little parts of a big
like
picture.
Going narrow on something.
Yeah, it depends on how you think. And
So you're thinking long term, bigger picture.
Big picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how my mind works. Early on, I discovered China, obviously, and I came across and I was, hang on, some things don't add up, and I became aware of China's economy and China's rise, and early on, I ended up dating a Chinese girl, and it turns out that she was a daughter of a CCP member from Shenzhen.
All right. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with Shenzhen.
Yeah, we were discussing that before. Shenzhen's the Silicon Valley of China. They're literally siphoning money out of Hong Kong, just sucking it dry, and they're putting it in the Shenzhen and Guangzhou. The Silicon Valley, and Guangzhou is the manufacturing hub. Her father was a property developer, mega rich. And her job was to come to Australia, study something that she wasn't even interested in. Daddy just kept sending her money until she could get permanent residency or citizenship, and then bring Daddy over.
So if you study here for a certain amount of years, you're allowed to live here?
Yeah,
right?
So if you do a degree, you by default just get citizenship or permanent residency, and then you can bring your parents over. And that's part of the strategy of CCP members. They come in, right?
Because I think about 80% of foreign people studying here is from China, like a massive number anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, the second or third biggest contributor to our GDP is education, international students. And a large number of them come from China.
So we make a lot of money from education, like educating foreigners, and then just digging holes in Australia.
Yeah, well, I guess number one is digging holes.
Yeah, okay.
Manufacturing failed. Manufacturing failed for a multitude of reasons. It's not what the media tells you. The real reasons are very different, and it's basically down to us just not being good at it.
Would it be
being very good at it?
Sense. And would it be the cost involved as well?
And we're just not efficient. If you're not good at something, it fails. Yeah. That's partly the reason. But manufacturing, we dig holes and we put our resources like coal, iron ore. We put them on ships and we send them through the sea. Australia's an island, right? And we're right at the end of Asia. And all of our trade goes north. It doesn't go west. There's nothing but sea. East, there's nothing. East and south is nothing but ice. So everything goes through Indonesia, goes through Asia. We're an island. It has to go through the sea. And a lot of people need to understand why we were actually allied with Britain in the first place. I guess we're a colony, but Britain was the maritime power. They had this massive navy that ruled the entire sea,
Is
right?
this 200 years ago or back when we first
150 years ago, something
Yeah.
like that.
Britain's dominating the seas.
Yeah. The Opium Wars was when China realized that Britain, this little tiny nation, had a great navy. But the reason why we latched onto Britain and held on to Britain for such a long time was because our ships need to go through the sea.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not protected by the biggest navy in the region, we're in a lot of trouble. Our economy collapses. And so we need to make sure that, and if there's a police, they can protect, and they protect their friends, of course. And that's why Australia has been safe for such a long time. We've always had this power that has ruled the sea, a maritime power.
What year did, you might not know what year, but America eventually took over as the maritime force, didn't they?
World War II, Britain got themselves into a war, obviously, the Nazis and everything.
Yep.
And during that time, especially the early period of the war, America was smart. They just stepped back, and they still held resentment against the British because of the Revolutionary Wars, because they fought the British. A lot of generals actually argued against fighting for Britain in World War II. So they held back, but they moved in eventually. But for that short period, America was just manufacturing, which China's doing now, and trading with every nation in Europe and getting rich and taking all their gold. That's how they became so rich, because they just sat back.
Well, I thought it was because of the oil and the money being tied to the US dollar. Like everyone had to sort of purchase US dollars to buy oil then.
This happened after.
Okay. Yep.
So they were trading first, and then I don't know the exact date, but there was a time period where Saudi Arabia or Iran, they first discovered that they had oil and
their reserves, and
and we realized at a period that we didn't need to hunt whales for oil. We could find it in under the ground. And Iran kind of went on their own. They had this tough sort of political situation. Saudi Arabia did the smart thing and latched onto the most powerful country in the world and became
the US. Yeah,
you became
so the
best
US
buddies.
offered them protection for an oil
It's
agreement.
the same deal everywhere. You get rich as long as you don't have to spend your money on your military. You just trade.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do things, and that's what Australia's done for such a long time. But the problem here is that, and I'm getting away from
from China, but
the question. But yeah,
but we're talking about maritime
maritime trade. That's the period where America became the maritime power, and that's why we shifted. That's the only reason why, because they had aircraft carriers ruling the sea for such a long time, and all we needed to do was work. We just needed to dig holes, put them on ships and send them off and sell the resources and get rich. And we didn't have to invest in our military. It built this complacency. Australia's never been invaded, and Japan's not even counted. A few people landing isn't really counted. I know people will say, well, we're in trouble, but we were never really in trouble. America controlled this area, and America was always very powerful. So we've never had a reason to think about it. And even now, because of the complacency in the past, it's hard to adapt to the current situation where China is now working on ruling the sea, and it'll be the first time in Australia's entire history that we will have an enemy as the ruler of the sea.
Maritime,
the maritime power.
Of the sea. What's China's neighbours think of them controlling the China Sea? Like, I've heard different arguments, some saying they don't want America in their waters patrolling and they prefer China, but then you hear about China taking over some Vietnamese boats and just telling them to not fish in their waters, so to speak. But it's whose waters is it technically?
So what would you rather? Would you rather a regional hegemon that oppresses all of its neighbors? And we have patterns. This has happened throughout history. Look at America, right? They're the American hegemon. The only country that's really benefited was, well, they invaded everybody, right? They invaded everybody, and it's called South America for a reason, because they own South America, and they have to do what they're told. There's a reason why certain countries, like a good example is Venezuela. Venezuela is an oil-rich nation. They became rich for a brief period of time. They're not allowed to get rich. The reason why is because the global hegemon would not allow it. They don't. The regional hegemon would not allow a peer competitor. They do not tolerate peer competitors. It's the best way to put it. And as Venezuela became rich, America didn't like that. Then they do what they can to try and destroy them, right? And so America needs to be a regional hegemon. They invaded Canada. I think they moved the capital of Canada a bit further infield because they were expecting a return visit, right?
All right, yeah.
so they knew, but Canada knew what was good for them, and they became good friends with America. Certain countries America's the regional hegemon. That's the best way to put it, right? And by being the regional hegemon, that gives them the ability to roam. If you don't have any trouble at home and everyone's scared of you, you can then build a navy and then start. That's why America has its tentacles all around the world.
They've got bases everywhere, even on like the borders of Russia and Poland and stuff.
Yeah, and they're our best friend because they've been the maritime power and they look after us. In fact, they look after us more than we look after them. If anything, most Australians are a bit snarky. They say bad things about America, and it just makes you scratch your head. We don't need a big military because we've had this great, powerful friend protecting us for such a long time. So I think for people listening to this, they need to understand something else, okay? So why is China a threat? There's the maritime trade issue, of course. This started back in 2011. This is pretty much the timeline,
you started
right?
Looking into it, or
myself, it was about that time period.
But you weren't making videos till 2015.
No, March 2015 was the first video, and it's even only today that the economy's collapsed and people realize that China's a threat. That it's kind of acceptable to discuss these things, but it's always been a real threat. And Barack Obama, back in 2011, he realized that many countries in Asia were rising economically, and when it comes to great power politics, when your economy builds up, you get a large economy, naturally that translates into military might. And so he gave a speech in 2011 called The Pivot to Asia, and just let Asia know, look, they're the maritime power. We're going to be watching you guys a little bit more. And China's rise was obviously a threat. 2008, the global financial crisis did a lot of damage to America, and China saw that as an opportunity to capitalize. So then the speech happened 2011. 2014, what did China do? They started building artificial islands in the middle of the South China Sea.
Oh, yeah.
And they said that
artificial island. They didn't conquer an island. They built their own.
They were like reefs that were not so deep, and they had these like dredging or drenching type ships that would come in and suck sand off the floor of the sea
and chuck it on the reef
and put it on, and built these artificial islands, and then they started building runways to land planes, and next thing you know, they start building missile launching pads, and they just
weaponizing it, really.
They militarized every single island and started pointing it at every ship going by. So at that point, 2014, when you start looking at international politics, it's game theory. It's anarchy. It's like gangsters in the street.
Think, if I do this, what are they going to think about it?
Yeah. Like if you got a gun, I think, why does he have a gun?
I need a gun.
I need a gun to protect myself. But you're thinking, I've got a gun to protect myself. See, China's argument was we built these in the South China Sea to protect themselves. What do you think every other country...
Everyone that's passing through trading is like, why is these guns pointing at
they're
my
not
ship?
carrying guns.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You see? Philippines obviously was scared. Went to an international tribunal in The Hague where they ruled against China. They said, look, you don't own the South China Sea. It's international waters so that we can have free trade and everyone can get rich. And it's a perfect signal to the world of China's intent.
To say, no, it's ours.
Well, to make everybody poor and China rich, become the leader in Asia and dominate the maritime trade. You dominate the maritime trade, you get to choose who goes through and who doesn't.
Okay.
And if you can't get your ships through, you become poor.
Is this the biggest trade spot in the world, like this passage
I believe
through
it
Asia?
is.
Yeah.
I believe it is, yeah. I believe it is.
China's now focusing on rail, though, on like the Belt and Road.
They have a Belt and Road initiative, which is building the old Silk Road from China all the way through to pretty much through to Iran. Africa is also the sea, but the thing is, land is not as effective as sea. You can just put it on a boat and then deliver it. It's cheaper, it's more efficient.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
If you control the sea, that's where the money is, right? So China has, they've spent money in countries building the old Silk Road. And for people at home that don't know, China throughout history, every, 500 years or more, has had massive empires and ruled the world. Like a lot of people, they think, America ruled the world for such a long time, but it's been a blip on the map.
It's only been a couple 100 years, hasn't it?
Not even 100 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Not even 100 years. China has ruled for several hundred years, many times throughout history. They've almost always been the largest economy in the world, and this is just a return to the norm for them. And if you look at their history, some of their old empires were some of the most ruthless empires of all time, where they literally, instead of trading with other nations, they would make them subordinate nations where they would arrive in ships or by land and say, okay, you got my presents, and they would have to give them food for free or whatever. It's called a tributary system that they've had. And this is how China has behaved for thousands of years. Britain, this little tiny third world barbarian state that figured out how to build ships, and drug dealers, that's what they were. They were drug dealers. They managed to take out the biggest country in the world through their military, through their navy. Well, it was the Opium War, but their navy decimated the Chinese ships, and then all these other countries came in and took out China. That's like the tiny guy taking out
like
the
David
heavyweight.
Versus Goliath.
It's even worse than that. It's like,
Like
the disabled guy in a wheel, the ant taking on the heavyweight world champion, right?
Yeah.
And it was just a fluke of nature. And people see it as the norm, but it's not the norm. The norm is China ruling the world with an iron fucking fist. It's a brutal regime still to today.
I think, like say South Park and stuff, like there's an episode where they talk about Japan, like Japanese have such small penis, and I don't know, I think that like just through media and stuff, like no one takes China as seriously as what they maybe should. I don't know.
I guess African guys, because they're on average 7 foot
Massive,
tall and have like 10-inch dicks. They probably look at little white Americans and go, "Oh, those little piddly guys." But who's gonna fuck you up, Africa or America? So this whole comparison is just not in reality.
Because we're at a point with like technology and and they're really smart. So
and so this is why they're a threat. So when you look at the maritime trade from Australia's point of view, we dig holes. We don't have a military because we've had this great powerful friend that has protected our naval trade, maritime trade forever. So we've never had to protect our trade. And it's just, we've got rich from simply trading because people protect us, right? And we've fallen into the complacency that all of our trade is supposed to be safe. Oh, human rights and all these other myths. And human rights is a myth that is created by first world countries that have money.
True.
You only have that if you are rich.
Yeah.
Your life is worthless if you're in a third world country and you don't have money. That's just the reality of the world.
Governments.
It's amazing how people don't understand how the real world really works. So now what we have is this great, massive country. It's a behemoth. Like for Australians to look down on China in any way, shape or form is absolutely ridiculous. Their economy is 20 times larger than ours, maybe more. 20 times. Just to think about
What's
that.
their population in comparison to Australia? Is it 20 times bigger or more than that? So we're like
more
25 million, aren't they?
We-
Like 1.6 billion.
We have 25 million people on this landmass called
But
Australia.
there's a lot of them are Chinese.
A large percentage are immigrants that, if anything was to go wrong, will just get on the next flight or boat out of here.
Back to their home.
They're only here for the Australian dollar.
Mhm.
The Australian dollar collapses. There's only going to be a few Australians in the outback with a few sticks trying to fight off the largest military in the world.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the situation we're in, right? And our maritime trade is under threat right now because of the South China Sea, as we just mentioned. China is on the rise, and they're continuously rising. The United States is slowly being pushed out of Asia, and this has been happening consistently since, say, 2011, maybe longer. But since 2014, when they built those artificial islands, from that point on, they started commandeering ships that were just fishing vessels from third world countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, all of these countries that just fish to feed their own population because they're third world countries. The Chinese Navy will go over there and actually take the ship and kill them. And I've actually seen footage of them actually killing fishermen for no reason other than they're such a patriotic, nationalistic Chinese Navy
They don't
that
want them in their water.
this is ours, you should know better, bang, 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 we're going to kill you.
Say the Vietnamese and the Malaysians ever fight over the territory before? Or were they just happy to fish next to each other?
Well,
Is only China coming in now saying, like,
maybe
no one else
like
can fish
little
here?
scuffles, but nothing, not an international...
Not taking their ship and killing everyone.
Not actually killing people, yeah. And there was a international...
in recent times anyway.
There was an international tribunal in The Hague where they disputed China building these islands, and China just claimed the 9-dash line, they call it, which literally takes all of the sea. And then they disputed it, went to an international tribunal where Vietnam, Philippines...
So they're trying to say that their continent or part of, like, their landmass goes under the water, and they're trying to say that that's
Well,
part
the sea. So if you look at it, there's China up here, and then, you got Vietnam, you got Indonesia all the way down here, you got Philippines here. It's like the 9-dash lines. They put 9 dashes, and they said, look, this is all ours. And by the way, we got this map written by a guy that we don't even know, and about 50 years ago he wrote this map, so this is our evidence that we own it. And I went to an international tribunal, and they all said, well, no, you're taking international waters from all of these sovereign nations that need to fish there. They need maritime... You're threatening... They're effectively threatening peace and stability in Asia. So it was a clear sign to every country that China was going to rule or aim to militarize Asia and dominate it and push the United States out. Now, if that happens, every single ship leaving Australia is in danger. Every single ship is in danger.
The protection of the American ships.
Yeah. And that means that all of our money would have to spend a lot more money on, just say you send a ship with coal.
You have to get a military or a navy vessel.
You would
next
have to get a navy, a destroyer to follow it up, and an oiler to refuel it. It's an expensive.
So should we be focusing more on just trying to do everything in house in Australia? Like, growing all their own foods and trying to build our own products and that.
Then we'll be the Philippines, third world shithole.
Really?
Let's just
So
be
you need to
let's just be realistic.
Focus on what we do, which is just digging holes.
We have this great, massive military on our doorstep that is actively planning to take our freedom. If this powerful dollar that we have, thanks to America's protection, means that China has to spend a lot of money on our coal, our iron ore, all of our resources that they want, our sweet crude. We have almost a monopoly on sweet crude, not to mention everything else that we have here. Gold, we got mines of gold, and the price of gold is skyrocketing at the moment. So they're back on?
Yeah, everything's
all good?
On.
All working?
What are we talking about?
So international politics is gangster. And I guess we've all realized, because of the collapse in the economy, how vulnerable we are. And when it comes to a massive possible Asian hegemon ruling the sea on our doorstep, that means that we need to do what they tell us in the future. And what does China want? China buys a lot of resources from Australia, and they have to pay a high price for those resources. If they were able to somehow collapse this economy,
they'll be able to buy a lot of businesses and stuff for cheaper.
What if they could take it for free? What if they didn't? This is what
by force, you mean, or just
by force? What if they were able to take it by force? Like, what's
we couldn't
to stop
do anything
them?
about it, but the world would see China in a bad light, and then
the world has always seen China in a bad light. Most Australians are just naive to it.
Okay.
But Chairman Mao has the gold medal for kills. He's killed 100 million or so, like, not necessarily just actual killings, but people that had to starve to death for the Great Leap Forward. You know, they killed 100 million people, their own people, right? Yet we have been kissing up to China ever since and trading with them. So reputation doesn't always mean anything.
Yeah. Okay.
If you can profit from it, and that's the intergenerational amnesia to some extent. And if you remember someone, I kill you, no one else is going to know. And that's the reality of the situation too.
Just hide it under the blanket. Has Xi Jinping done anything horrific in his time in office, though? Like, maybe the ways of China's changed?
Well, the South China Sea.
So that's in his time.
South China Sea. He has continuously threatened to invade Taiwan. He has sucked billions, if not trillions of dollars out of Hong Kong to make his country rich. That's why Hong Kong people are becoming poorer and poorer and protesting. Is that
why the protests happen?
Yeah. The umbrella movement. Also taking away their freedoms, killing Hong Kong people, which is publicized quite well because the Hong Kong people have access to social media.
Yeah, they do. To our social media. I mean, like Facebook,
and that's how we know accurately what's going on. And that's with the world watching, and they still do that, and they don't care. Okay? So that's a good example.
So the world doesn't care about what's going on in Hong Kong, or there's nothing they can really do?
The world knows, but...
How can they do something about it? Bring it up at the UN? Or...
China doesn't care what you think.
Okay.
This is international politics.
You have to go to war with them to stop it.
Yeah, this is how we end up in wars. It's because if they don't want to negotiate with you and they don't care what you think, and they're going to do what they're going to do anyway, what are your options?
Yeah.
Tariffs, trade war.
So that's what they've been doing recently.
What we've done is we've built a balancing coalition, apparently, which is not really effective, which is supposed to be Japan, India, Australia, say Taiwan for some example.
They're working together.
It's pretty useless.
Have you heard of BRICS?
BRICS is more of a
BRICS
financial.
Bank?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a financial. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and now South Africa. That's like a financial sort of setup that they were building. But still on the topic of has Xi Jinping done anything evil?
Yeah.
I haven't even started.
Oh, okay.
Still killing Tibetans to this day, killing their own people because Tibetans are Chinese people. Put 1 million people in Xinjiang. 1 million. The latest reports are it's up to 3 million in re-education camps. It's a population of 1.4 billion recorded, but the actual population could be 1.7 billion people.
What's the population of Tibet?
Very good question.
small, like-
Shrinking every day.
Yeah. 'Cause didn't a lot of them move to India and follow the Dalai Lama there?
There's still a lot of Tibetans there. It's
Yeah.
it's actually a large area too, by the way. It's actually a large area. And what they've been doing is they'll put Han Chinese people in. So what they do is they just send their own, Chinese members in that are patriotic Chinese
Okay.
and populate the area. And then after a while, you're gone.
Sounds like what they're doing in Australia.
Exactly. You got it, right? Another template was the annexing of Crimea. Now, Russia annexed Crimea, right? Now, how Russia did it was over many years, they continuously pushed Russian people in, and they started living there, and then they started building up their own little communities within Crimea. Next thing you know, it's all gone.
Yeah, okay.
If the population is Russian, then the country becomes Russia.
Yeah. 'cause
The
it's
same
what they
as
speak and it's-
yeah. Apparently, there was a war with China and Russia at one stage, right?
Mhm.
And China was poor, so what they did was they sent 1 million Chinese in to surrender, and then Russia had to look after 1 million people, and then China sent another 1 million people in there to surrender, and then Russia's like, oh,
So
well,
they feed all these new mouths.
and then next thing you know, China sent
He's
another
he's
million.
in Russia then.
Yeah, and then Russia's like, oh no, we surrender. It was like, what do you
But
do?
why would you send your troops there to surrender? Like,
Because then you have to look after them.
but wouldn't
and
that
if
be
they're
fishy
so-
to the Russians? Like, if you surrender, why are you coming here? Like,
Well,
why
is
don't you
Russia
stay in
is
China?
Russia going to sit there and kill 1 million people?
Mm.
Are they going to kill them, or are they going to feed them and try to house them in the jails?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Imagine the reputation Russia would have if they killed them all.
Yeah,
like
they
this,
could send them home. Just go fuck off. Like,
well, then it's you see how this can play out, right? So this is what's happening in Australia as well. But the people that come to Australia, they're the ones that have money and connections to the CCP. So they come here and do the CCP's bidding
But-
within our own country.
with the world being a lot more connected now, like there's, like you said, a lot of Chinese here in Australia and in America even. Do you reckon there's a chance that they'll go to war, or it's harder for them to go to war because we're so multicultural now? Like,
No. We're multicultural. That doesn't mean the world is.
yeah, okay.
China's not multicultural at all.
Well, I didn't see many white people there actually.
Yeah, China is a racist country that the Han Chinese dominate. If you have a little bit of, there's 63 different races, I believe, 63 different racial ethnicities within China.
Oh, right.
And the Han Chinese are the ones that dominate it. And you can visually see them because they're the ones with the bright white skin, because white skin is beautiful or good looking over there. If you have dark skin, then you're a second class citizen. It's like a caste system, like in India.
Okay.
That's how it works in China.
Well, I've heard they're really racist towards, like Vietnamese people and if you're Chinese, like they.
Yeah. You can be of Han Chinese descent from one of the other third world countries, and if you're not Chinese, you're not Chinese.
Mhm.
That's just how it is. You got no place anywhere. So that's kind of the issue. But also, we also have people of Han Chinese descent within Australia that are first, second, third generation Australian,
And now full Aussie, like.
and they're Aussie as you can get.
Yeah, I've got.
But what they
Nice.
do is, at home they might learn Mandarin, and they complain about Australia. And if China rises, who takes the jobs?
If
who-
China rises, who takes the job?
If China rises, controls Australia, replaces
Chinese
the
get the
white
jobs.
man with a Han Chinese guy, who
Well,
gets
do you
the
reckon
job?
the Chinese will get the job, or the best person for the job will get the job?
No, well, that's not how the world works.
It's always nepotism.
Look at Australia. Competency isn't always what rises to the top.
Especially our prime ministers.
Yeah. Now in Australia, the people who rise to the top, the best decision you can make, being born in Australia today, is having the right parents.
What do you mean?
And you don't get that choice. You know, if you have
who you want to.
yeah. So that's why the
So
media.
what, you'd want to have Chinese parents being born in Australia? Long term.
I personally, right now, I wish I was Chinese and could speak Mandarin because I'd be safer here.
Is there any way to protect yourself then? So, like, if you married a Chinese person, will they?
No. The Australian people have let themselves down by not listening to people like me until it's too late. I've got a voice now, but it's that's why on my channel I have 2022 economic collapse in third world country.
Oh, you predicted stuff.
And
in
2034, we're a third world shithole with a socialist government that controls this place and gives all the jobs and all the power to the Han Chinese that are here. They work in the mines, and I guess maybe some Aussies will have like really low paying jobs. But this is the vision that I see. Yeah. It's not a very nice vision.
But I think you're right. Like, they're slowly taking over the jobs, but it's like, how long will it take for all this to play out? And is there anything we can do? Like,
one good thing about this economic shutdown, and I've been following this for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I've been watching it, and I've been seeing how naive not just the Australian people, but Western society is. And if someone like me talks about maritime trade, for some reason it's not an issue, or it's not something that is a real threat until now. We've artificially shut down our own economy because of a virus which is relatively dangerous, don't get me wrong. It's probably me. I got the virus. There's
Sydney.
1% death rate, and if you don't flatten the curve and be careful, you know the death rate could be a lot higher. You know.
Yes, we've got to take it seriously. But there's some countries like Sweden haven't done anything.
Yeah,
you know, they focus more on the economy than.
But I guess part of what kind of happened was we have we've shut down our economy, and we've told people have lost their jobs, and unemployment rates like 10%, maybe 20% if you calculate people who have lost hours and are on the cusp of poverty and still kind of working. And they've been told that the reason why is because of China. So what we've done is if this was an orchestrated plan by the Western countries, and I believe to some extent we've over-exaggerated the shutdown just to give the Western societies a slap around the face, wake up to China. What it does is it gives the Western countries the political will to even talk about China as a threat, and maybe take action a little bit later on in the future. And that's that. We either have this, which we're suffering from now, which is bad enough, but imagine if just Australia was cut off and we were blockaded. Like, our ships started going up and disappearing.
Yeah, okay.
Imagine if that happened and we're not prepared. We haven't even had the discussion. We've been in a diplomatic freeze with China for over 2 years, by the way. They're not returning our emails.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They're not returning our voice messages. Scott Morrison calls and Xi Jinping's like, oh, it's Scott again.
Yeah, fuck.
Doesn't answer the phone. This is serious. All we hear is their media and their foreign minister telling us how bad we are because we did this. We're not friends with this country.
I think in China, in their eyes, that they see us. Well, maybe not China, but other countries, for instance, because we're helping them pollute. We're the ones giving them all the coal. So I think there's a lot of countries that don't like Australia for what we've done to help them become so powerful. If you know what I mean? Like we're the ones giving them.
Well, that's another issue. But if you're looking at China as a human rights violator, 50% of global emissions comes from China.
Yeah. Because the manufacturing.
Yeah, it's
But you
the.
can't blame them for that. If everyone's using the products that they just build there, it's like if they're still using all the products we've got now, they've got to be built somewhere.
They could do it cleaner.
Well, like Australia should do their own manufacturing, like,
Mm.
because everything should be closer, so you're not using like coal to get it, the other side of the planet. It's just a waste of materials. So, like, what are we dependent on? Say if we did get blockaded, are we dependent on a lot of food trade, or like why would Australia suffer from that? We don't have enough in-house to keep us going?
Right now, we still have planes going in and out of the country. We
Really?
still have ships leaving the country and trading. Yeah, there's planes coming in and out of Australia still today.
It's only a few countries, is it?
No, we've got people coming in. I believe if you still search, you can still fly out. Just say you're...
Yeah, right.
There's still flights going in and out.
It's a lot more expensive and harder to find.
Limited,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
We still have our ports sending, trade
That's the one
to
we
and
should
from.
talk about, actually. Yeah.
But if we were blockaded, nothing comes in and nothing goes out. That's why I said this is a good little trial run of the extent of what a blockade is. A blockade is serious business, right? It's next level. But yeah, sorry.
Because the blockade would affect us most because of our exports would stop. We won't be making money. Not so much food coming in, we'll starve. Like,
I believe that because of what happened recently, people started talking about our food security, and we produce 3 times what we need apparently.
okay, so we're set for food.
Yeah, but we also need other things as well.
Yeah, right.
Like these mics probably come from somewhere. They're made in Mexico.
Are they?
Mm.
Well, we don't need China. We've got perfect microphones, thanks, Shaw.
Well, that's the thing. These products would not be coming in, and if we're
'cause it's
blockaded, our currency would go to nothing. So how are you going to buy something with a currency that doesn't exist? If
That's
we're
why
blockaded,
Australia needs to... We need more than just digging holes, We need to make products ourselves. Or big businesses. Like America's like the brand of the world. We've got a McDonald's, we've got a KFC, we've got, even if you do financials in Australia, like small businesses do all their taxes through a thing called Xero, and that's owned by New Zealand. So New Zealand knows how much money Australia is making, and we don't really have like American companies using Australian companies. Like,
okay,
there's not the Aussie burgers in McDonald's in every.
We got
state,
Atlassian,
Do we?
which is a relatively good tech company. These guys are doing okay.
I was reading about like Australian scientists who had been working on a cancer. It was in Newcastle University actually, a research for cancer, and they sold it for like $580 million to an American pharmaceutical company. But it's like all this potential for Australia to get bigger and to make money off other countries like they do off us. They just sell it off to it's hard for us to get ahead because our government doesn't put the right things in place for us to want to keep that that patent in Australia, for instance.
Well, that's capitalism.
Is it?
That's capitalism. That's that's a decision that they see.
The person who made it, they wanted that money.
If the Australian government stepped in and said, "No, you got to keep it," or "We're going to buy it from you," that's socialism.
Yeah, okay.
That's one step away from communism.
Yeah.
That's not the free open market. And then we're kind of socialist in some aspects. In other aspects, we're capitalist. The problem is with China is that they pretend they're capitalist. They build these massive businesses like Alibaba, for one example.
Yep.
Jack Ma. Have you heard of Jack Ma?
I have, yes.
Very rich, very successful man who stole technology from the West, educated in America, came really dumb, really stupid man. He's really unintelligent. He cannot put 2 words together. He has no idea what he's talking about.
How did he build such a big business?
Because he was backed by the Chinese Communist Party. He stole technology and he had intelligent developers back in China. So he stole the ideas, stole the technology, figured out who to make friends with, and they built it in China for him. Recently, they took it off him. He doesn't own it anymore.
He's not the head.
There's 5 shady characters that we don't even really know running the company now.
Okay.
That's communism for you, you know, and then they use that to export around the world. You know, Alibaba's still exporting to Australia.
Yeah.
And they're making money off it.
Well, Australians do make money off it too. You know.
To some extent. Then we touch on the domestic economy and how we need to protect our domestic economy as well. There's the big picture. There's geopolitical problems. Obviously, I've talked about that enough. But our domestic economy, like recently we discovered the Daigous sending masks and hand sanitizer abroad. The milk powder.
Baby formula.
Baby formula, all these other products. Now, a lot of Australians are getting angry about that, and they're getting angry because I guess we're running out of supplies. In a capitalist country, we should be going to the company saying, produce more, make more money. But my biggest issue with this is that the Daigous...
They don't pay tax, is it?
Well, that's one issue. But my biggest issue, one of the biggest issues, is that this is a racist little system that they got going because Daigous are only Chinese. How many Australians, of the 10% of Australians that are unemployed right now, would love to just go down the Woolworths or Coles, buy some baby formula, and then flip it? Yeah, literally go down there
do that?
and send... No, because this app WeChat is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. They don't have access to the middle class of Chinese that are desperate for this. And China has...
It's about network, though. But like they could, if they went to China and got their own
Well,
network.
the Chinese have access to our networks. So just say AirTasker. How many Chinese people can just get on AirTasker?
Is AirTasker Australian?
It doesn't matter. Like Gumtree, Classifieds, it's for everybody. It's capitalism. But the Chinese, they build these little systems that only Chinese can use. There's no reason why they can't set up an so they set up an AirTasker style, a Daigou business and an app in Australia. Yep. So you and me can now download the app, go, 5 tins of baby formula. It's on its way, sir. Put the label on, buy it, go down there.
And they do it all in the app, so it's all done through
But
WeChat,
the Chinese do it only to Chinese in Mandarin, and they've got their own little way of connecting up with their networks. They don't even know half these people that they're sending it off to.
Yeah.
Why don't you and me have access to it? See, that's how they build an economy within our economy. Also, they have to be registered with China. So these Daigous... These Daigous are actually registered. They actually sign up and pay tax to the Chinese Communist Party when they're doing business in Australia.
Is that China's fault, or is it our government's fault for allowing this to happen?
It's our government's fault for not identifying it.
Opportunists here,
and we're too stupid to not take action. So our government and the Australian people are too...
they're too preoccupied. Everyone's busy.
Preoccupied and complacent because we've never been under threat. So they haven't learnt to look for these threats. Right?
Everyone's waiting to watch the footy. No one cares about
exactly.
What's going on.
But now... Whoa, sorry.
Right.
There's a little hole there.
Oh.
Yeah. I was listening.
No,
so they're a little bit... sorry about that. They're a little bit complacent, and they don't identify all these problems. And that's now... But now...
Do you reckon that's because we've had such a government that's been so... fragmented in the last few years? It's different leaders every year nearly.
No, it's the Australian people. The Australian government is a democracy that's a reflection of the Australian people. If the Australian people saw this as a threat,
so we're just dumber than China.
We're really dumb. Yeah. Let's just be realistic. I wouldn't say dumb. We're complacent. We're complacent and naive to the threat, and we could be
because we're in the lucky country. We've never known.
So little things like taxing a Daigou didn't seem like an issue before. But now that we have 10% unemployment, fingers crossed they wake up.
Starts adding up the numbers.
They're like, hang on, it's $1 trillion business. It's $1 trillion business.
I watched, you can watch this on Dave's episodes. You spoke about the Daigous and how they, it's helping like the Chemist Warehouse and stuff like that because they're making so much sales because of these, there's so many people in China for these Daigous to send baby formula back to. It's actually keeping Chemist Warehouse Chemist Warehouse. It's keeping some of these chemists in business And
Well, yeah, they buy it from the chemist or Woolworths or Coles, but they get it from the actual company. So, like, what is it, Bellamy or whatever that creates the milk powder or
Yeah,
the
okay,
baby
yeah.
formula or.
they'll buy it directly from them, you mean?
So, well, when the Daigous go buy these products, the chemist warehouse gets more stock in, and then it comes from them. If we shut down the Daigous tomorrow, those businesses would go bankrupt because the Daigous sell so much product, and that's not the issue. That's great. That's
good for
that's good for us
The jobs
to
and
sell
stuff.
a lot,
But they need to be paying tax.
but they're not paying tax. They're paying tax to China for buying products and skimming off the top,
So we're getting
flipping it. And also, a lot of the payment, how do you think they're getting paid? It's not going into an Australian bank account. Through
WePay, Alipay or WeChat.
Yeah, through WeChat, they have WePay, so that they get the payment, and each transaction costs a small percentage of that gets sent back to China. So China's profiting from this entire $1 trillion Daigou business, and I would love to see at least
politicians talk about it. Or
I'd love to see 51% of unemployed Australians go down to Woolworths. It should be the new Australian thing. Buy some baby formula and flip it and have access to this market. It should be the new Aussie battler way to do business.
Could an Australian get on WeChat in these groups somehow? And
part of the problem is the language barrier.
Yeah.
And China deliberately creates this app so that we cannot figure it out if you don't speak the language.
Yeah, you'll be able to read it.
You see, like if you go to an Australian website, you can click the button and it translates. But when it comes to, China could easily make a kind of Airtasker type system. Okay, look, I've got some kids. I need 5 tins of baby formula per month or whatever. Here's my order, and any Australian can bid for that order to do the delivery and do the footwork around here.
So the cheapest person to come in will get the work.
They could do that, like Airtasker, but China deliberately wants Chinese people, so they don't even think about facilitating work for other people. And this is the big issue with dealing with China, is that they don't even think about your work. They only think about Chinese people getting work wherever they are.
Okay.
They deliberately exclude you from their economy within your own economy. That's why it's a parasitic economy within our economy.
Racist.
Well,
Is that the word?
They're
true blue to themselves.
Their discriminatory trade practices exclude the countries that they deal with, and they, like, just say you go to China and you go to one of these markets to try and buy some product, right? If you're not a local, the Chinese people will mark it up.
More.
It's double or triple, right? That's racist in itself. But a local goes down there, they can negotiate. Those same Chinese people in that market come to Australia, start up a legitimate business like a real estate, and they will charge more for a local person and give a bargain rental to a Chinese person. This trade practice isn't just in their country. It's happening in our country. To be racist and try to scam every other country. It's part
racist,
of their...
or is it just them help, like, they all work together as a family. Like, if there's a family of 5, they'll all get their income and then buy the eldest son his house, and then they'll all pay that off, and then they'll all
That's
work
a family. Together. I'm talking about 2 Chinese people that have never met themselves, each other.
I noticed that. They work... Is that because we're capitalism? Like, it's like, I want to sell you this microphone, but you need a certain microphone that's like, better for indoors or outdoors for wind and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this is the one. You want this one? Because I need to make the sale. Whereas it's not the best thing for you. Whereas in China, you're like, I need this product. If that person hasn't got it, they're like, go down this shop, 2 down there, go there, and they help each other. They
help each other out.
That's why we're losing, because it's like
It's as you said, it's ingrained in them, and I can understand why we thought it was okay. You go to a third world country, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll chuck you a few extra dollars. But when it's level playing field in your own country, it's a big issue, and the complacency to not even acknowledge that as a threat or just allow it to happen under our noses it's unforgivable. The Australian people should really take a good look at themselves for allowing this to happen.
And like you said, like when you arrived here in Newcastle, you said there's not many Asian people
Yeah.
at first sight. From the
I
train
feel
station.
weird around here. I feel strange. I'm like, so many white people. Where is this place again?
Yeah.
Where is this place? Because I'm in the CBD where I'm the minority.
Everywhere you look.
I'm the minority.
So it's more, if you go to Sydney, it's more in your face. Like their presence.
Well, if I meet someone new in Sydney CBD and I ask them, where do you think I'm from? They have no idea. Why? Because there's no Aussies.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Think about it that way.
Yeah, true.
I met someone new yesterday and I was like, where do you think I'm from? And they were like, I don't know. I really just don't know. I'm like, well, don't you recognize the accent? No, because there's no Australians in Sydney.
In Shenzhen, there's like bubble tea is a thing now.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Is it?
It's the same thing. I think the only
Weird.
legitimate one is Cha Time.
Chinatown. We've got one of them in Charlestown Square. Yep. So they're
That's-
Australian owned, are they?
They're Singaporean.
Okay.
And Singapore and Australia. Singapore is more of a first world Asian little city, and they pay. You know, Singapore's a very strict city. Very strict.
Like throw gum on the ground, get a massive fine, go to jail, whatever.
So they're very careful with discriminating against other people. If you discriminate against Malays in Singapore, you get yourself in a lot of trouble. Paying tax, doing anything illegal, you're going to get yourself in a bit of trouble, right?
Yeah.
So this is part of the deal with Singapore. So recently they got in trouble for, I think, tax evasion. It was on the news.
What the government did.
Cha Time.
Oh, Cha Time, sorry.
Cha Time. And what happened was I've recently realized, while having a look at all of them, Cha Time's the only one that I've ever seen hire Westerners.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I actually saw some white girls working there, and I went up to them and said, "Are you working? Are you working here? How long? They hired you?" And this is how I discovered that they're doing the right thing. But every other one, only generally what they do is they hire Chinese workers, of course, because they only look after their own.
Mm-hmm.
Two, they only pay in cash.
They pay them in cash.
Pay them in cash. And they have...
Well, that's dodgy straight away.
Yeah, a lot of Australians pay cash as well. Let's just be
I've been
realistic
paid in
here.
cash before, I'm not going to lie. But yeah, if they're only paying in cash...
A lot of Aussies do it, but so I'm not going to get on my high horse about that too much, but what it is the discriminatory trade practices and the...
Not hiring the Aussies. And
Not hire... You know, so Aussies will take cash, but they don't care who they hire or work with because it's capitalism, right?
Yeah, yeah. Whereas they're about the
racist, and what they do is they exploit the Chinese students because they can only work 20 hours a week. So what they do is they fill up the rest of their hours with cash work. And that's how they do it, you know. And they can also pay them through WePay.
Yeah.
So there's all these dodgy ways of money laundering through as well. They are forced to sign a contract written in Mandarin. And often when you sign up to work for one of these milk tea places, you have to work for a month unpaid. Unpaid
to learn the ropes before you can get paid.
Learn the ropes, and you only get that month back once you've survived 6 months on the job. So that first month is in the bank.
So you get it back, but you got to be there for 7 months in total too.
Something like that, yeah. And it's written in the contract, and quite a lot of them do that. And then at the end of a certain period of time, you move up to the levels, you know. But the pay's way under a raw award wages as well.
So they're coming in just making their own rules. Where it's like, if you want to work here, you can, but it's...
That's a huge issue. That's why we have so many milk tea places out there, because their overheads are so small so that they can survive. You know, they're lean and mean.
Yeah.
So you have an Aussie business next door that's like a cafe.
Paying taxes.
Yeah. And
they can't keep as cheap prices, you mean?
Yeah, and they don't have Saturday and Sunday penalty rates either. It's
Ah,
just a
yep.
flat rate continuously. So just say Saturday and Sunday, the busiest days of the week, you have an Aussie cafe selling coffee and paying tax, paying their one barista penalty rates for Saturday and Sunday. Eventually the milk tea place
Yeah,
is just
they're gonna-
leaner and meaner, and they can survive no matter what. Even with this close down, you can see
Yeah.
one of the only businesses that's
They're still
surviving
open, yeah.
is the milk teas. They're surviving really well because they everything that they do is illegal.
Yeah.
Almost everything.
So yeah, times like this, those shops are just going to boom, and because they're doing the wrong thing.
All the Australian cafes are shutting down now. The only thing left will be the Chinese businesses because of their
work ethic, and because they can afford it, because they're not paying tax.
I've come full circle on the work ethic.
Yeah.
I think that they're just sneakier and more. They have this way of avoiding tax and avoiding doing the right thing. So if you have an accountant and you have to put in all the extra work and you have to pay tax and you have to do the right thing and you have less employees, you're lazy. You're working harder. Sorry, you're working a lot harder. But if you're a Chinese business, you have more employees because you pay them less. You're not even bothering with the books because you're just chucking cash at them at the end of the week. You're lazy. You just sit back and you've got all these.
Not doing the book
You have
work,
more
yeah.
workers doing less. In fact, they're more lazy.
And these businesses don't get shut down or brought to mainstream media because they're employing only Chinese, and say if like me or you work there and we didn't get the right pay we're meant to, we might kick up a storm about it because they're hiring their own. Is that
I
why you don't hear
exposed
about it?
them. I actually managed to turn a worker, so a worker for Hey Juice.
Hey Juice, is it?
I turned the worker. The worker gave me the contract, told me how the whole business works from the inside. I exposed it online. I put the contract and everything within my Facebook group. That was months ago. Nothing's happened.
No. Did anyone share it? Like
Thousands of people saw it. You saw it yourself.
I've watched it. I haven't shared it myself.
And
though.
I asked people to contact the ATO contact. So no doubt people would have emailed
who
it.
is the best person to talk to about that? Just ringing up the ATO.
I believe all of them. ATO, Fair Work.
Even your local council, could you talk to them about it, or they won't?
I think everybody, and if you accidentally call the wrong person, they'll put you in the right direction. So
if you call the wrong person,
if you call the council and they say no,
they'll tell you where
they'll
you
say
should be
call
taking
Fair
that.
Work or the ATO or whatever.
Yeah, so it's up to us to sort of,
Because we're too
do
complacent.
something about it.
Too
Yeah,
complacent, and I can't do it all myself. Like I put in hundreds of hours of work just to expose one of them. I had to turn an employee who's a Chinese person who put themselves at risk to get me this information, and nothing happened. It's like puff. And that's the perfect way to look at Australia's future. This is why we're screwed, because if an Australian business was breaking the laws in China, they wouldn't be there, outraged at this, because they only see it as we should be giving them money, not the other way around. And you got to understand the mentality. That's why they rip you off when you go to their stores. That's why when you give a Chinese person, even in Australia, a $50 bill, you count the change, because they will actually try to rip you off.
Okay.
They'll go, oh no, you gave me a 20.
See, I'm from Newcastle. No.
Yeah.
Not down here as much. But so you've experienced a lot of
I've given a
Chinese ripping you off.
I've given a 50
in Sydney,
and it was like, I don't know, $5, $6, $7, and they'll give me like a $10 bill and $2 something. I'm like, I gave you a 50. They're like,
I don't know.
He's
I'm
like,
Chinese.
I don't know.
Sorry,
yeah, which is utter bullshit, because all they know is
mathematicians, man.
You flip that on them and you try to rip them off, they're onto it, right? Yeah. And at every aspect of it, they're ripping off the welfare system. They're ripping off Medicare. So, for instance, around here, Newcastle, I had a dentist contact me, an Aussie dentist. They had Chinese people coming in to get fillings done. The Chinese people say, look, okay, I know you're only doing one filling, but when you swipe my Medicare card, can you say that you did 3 fillings so that I get a rebate higher?
3
back?
times rebate or something, is it?
Yeah, to scam Medicare.
Because each visit you get a rebate or something.
I received emails from a dentist up the road here, and what happened was that dentist was saying, look, okay, well, the Chinese up in Newcastle, they're traveling all the way down to Sydney to find a Chinese dentist that will actually rip off the Medicare system. So every single loophole that we have in this country is being exploited. And because we're so rich GDP per capita wise, we're just complacent, and we've never been invaded. We've always been the lucky country. We're just ignoring it. But now it's got to start hurting. All these little loopholes, they're hurting the economy, and it's taking away from our future. It really is.
Yeah,
it's a huge problem that someone in government needs to do something about it. But also that's why I'm speaking publicly, because I'm trying to get enough people behind these issues, and they're real issues, to go and coerce the government into taking action and plugging up all these loopholes, making these people, toe the line and do the right thing. It's not fair that an Australian business goes under because they're doing the right thing. That's just not fair.
But with Wagga Wagga Council, so what were they doing with the Chinese Communist Party? Or trying to do, like...
Wagga Wagga Council has a sister city relationship with Kunming. It's some city in China.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry, coronavirus. And they have a diplomatic relationship where the Kunming Council will actually pay to have Australian councillors fly to China on these paid junkets. The whole thing's paid for, and they're like, oh, come to China, and then they come back, and because they've had such a great experience in China, they come back to Australia, and they're like, China good.
This is like me. I had a good
China's
time.
really good. Don't say anything bad about China. Forget about South China Sea. Taiwan is not...
it's not Taiwan.
It's not
China.
Taiwan. It doesn't exist. That island doesn't exist. Don't worry about the concentration camps. Don't worry about the Tibetans. Don't worry about the people disappearing in Hong Kong and the murders and everything. Forget about that. This is how they have this soft power relationship. And what happened was one of the councillors raised this issue and asked if they could sever ties. And the reason why he did it was he was just angry, and he's justified in his anger because while China was publicly, and the World Health Organization was publicly saying that this is not a threat, don't worry about the virus, when you stop Chinese people entering your country, you're racist. That's what they said to us. They said that you're racist. Now we've destroyed, now our country's destroyed, our economy's like in a snooze mode, I guess, for the next, I don't know how many months, 6 months or whatever. But while this was happening, publicly they're saying that, look, it's not a threat, don't worry about it. You're racist if you don't let us in. You're racist if you don't let the virus come into your country. If you don't die from it, if you survive it, you're still racist. You have to die from it to prove that you're a proper liberal. But while that was all happening, they were messaging the councillors and requesting masks and sanitizer and all these goodies to be sent to China to help the fight. And they can't not let him in. And then no doubt, if they're paying for you to fly over there and you're part of their team, no doubt those councillors would have done everything in their power to send masks.
Okay.
We don't know. They didn't actually talk about this, but we don't know. So one of the councillors has had enough, and he put this motion forward to sever ties because, look, this government, this council, they don't have our best interests at heart. They didn't send us masks when Wagga Wagga started being hurt financially because of the economic close down, because they have the coronavirus. And that's why he said it should be mutually beneficial. It's not one-way traffic. Part of the problem is whenever you're dealing with a lot of the Chinese, it's all one-way traffic. And eventually, with one-way traffic, with 1.7 billion people in your country acting for China's behalf, everybody else becomes poor except China. unless we do something about it and like say, look, play fair. Even if we do play fair in our own country, right now
they're already got an upper hand, or so.
They're already going to win.
Yeah. So we need to fight back dirty, guys. We need to go over there and start finding their loopholes.
Well, I think we need to change policy in Australia. So, for instance, they will call it racist, but in China they have a 2-tier system. In major cities, there's Chinese-only hotels, and they're half price. So you go to Shanghai. It doesn't matter where you are. You can go to this hotel and get half price when all the foreigners right next door have to pay double, triple, quadruple the price. And you know how I found out, because one of the locals told me about this, and I tried to go into one of these hotels.
They wouldn't let you stay there.
But the guy picked up a stick and tried to hit me. I was like, what the hell's going on? He's like, no foreigners are even allowed in the lobby.
Is this in Shanghai, was it?
This is in Shanghai. This is in Shanghai. The supposed, the place where they have the free trade zone and everything. They're supposed to be welcoming the foreigners. They're not. They're really racist. And we should put policies in Australia that protect us. And what I mean is, so this generation of Australians don't have property. Let's just be realistic. No. Unless you were born into money, there's no way that you can somehow manifest.
Or you do what I did, do what Chinese do, and you all work together. Like me and two mates bought a house when we were 18, so it's possible. But you got to like group together. You can't do it.
Well,
like, I haven't got that property anymore.
The only reason why it's expensive for you is because someone born into a rich CCP family just arrives here and buys a property. That's why it's more. They should pay 3-4 times
fully.
And they should have to give it back after 70 years or something like that.
Yeah, or pay higher land tax or
it all should be, and even some even citizenship. So if you come from China, citizenship's dirt cheap. Even if they pay $200,000.
Yeah, we should be making bank off that.
Clean air, clean water, freedom, all of these goodies that we provide. It's minimum $1, $2, $3 million worth to get Australian citizenship. Let's just be realistic. They come from here, from a country with none of the benefits that we have. They arrive and then they go straight on the fucking pension.
Yeah.
Literally,
so like the people that are studying here, their parents would come and then get on the pension.
So what? Yeah,
so they're allowed that.
How it works is
surely the pension, you got to be in Australia for X amount of years before you can get it.
No. I have actually met Chinese people who have, as soon as they get citizenship, boom, within days they're down the Centrelink.
Really?
And while they're working for cash,
right?
Oh. Right, and getting money through WePay. Oh, come on. And the Australian people are being, so the property market and citizenship. So okay, here's the usual strategy that has been happening for 20 years now. You send your daughter or your son down. You pay whatever it costs, $50,000-$60,000. It's double what we pay for a degree.
So we're getting a little bit money, or is that the uni's getting that money?
The uni gets, that's why education is our second or third biggest export, right? But up front you get the money, right? And they're so happy to pay it. They're so happy to pay it when they first arrive. Then they study, and at the end they get citizenship. And then it all flips. Then they bring in two oldies that come in with... They're not doing anything. That might bring a lot of money in and buy property, but then they spend money.
They'll keep that in their country. Right?
That money that they spend when they arrive only goes into Chinese classifieds, Chinese real estate agents.
So essentially goes back to China.
It goes into Chinese. It builds this colony with a parasitic economy within our economy. Next thing you know, mum and dad comes over, then they bring the grandparents over. As soon as the grannies arrive, what do you think happens? Old age pension, Medicare, we just, and so what we've
costly.
What we've really got is we've got one person of working age that ends up just scamming the system anyway, and then their parents end up buying property, which makes it impossible for you and me to actually own something. So we can change all that by making it very more expensive to become.
And that's something we can do tomorrow.
What do you think Singapore is so rich? You
they
can't
tax a lot of people to live there.
you can't become a citizen. It's impossible.
Oh, okay.
You can marry a Singaporean citizen and still not get permanent residency. You still need to leave and come back.
Yeah.
You know?
They like change your visa.
They're
like,
smart. They
yeah.
do things different to us. If you start up a business, for the first 2 years you don't pay tax, and then it's a flat rate of 15%. In Australia, you get raped in the first day you start a business.
Yeah, and most fail because of that.
Most fails because of all the entrepreneurial spirit is live in Singapore. Singapore does so many things so well, and that's why they're winning. Yet our governments don't look at these things. They might know about it. They might have intelligent people in government that would suggest it, but the Australian people don't listen.
Yeah.
The Australian people are the problem. We have to go back because
we need to be smarter.
Our politicians are a reflection of us. And if
Which is not good.
and often we are more busy talking about Liberal and Labor and ideologies like this, instead of focusing on how can we protect ourselves.
Yeah, who cares if it's Labor or
You go to
Liberal?
Sydney CBD. I'm a minority. I can walk around and not meet someone that speaks English or is an Aussie.
Yeah, that's
for a
crazy.
long time. It's ridiculous.
So they're definitely in Sydney, but they're moving into Newcastle too, because Newcastle Port, the Port of Newcastle, signed a 99-year lease with them. Is it in Darwin as well?
Yeah.
So, I was watching. There's a channel actually called the Port of Newcastle on YouTube, and they haven't got many views on their stuff. But it was interesting, like hearing that they're saying that Newcastle's the biggest port on the east coast of Australia, like bigger than Botany and Brisbane. So, and it can host twice the amount of boats coming in and out that they do right now. So they're talking about putting a cruise line terminal in, and it was saying that mainly we use it for exporting coal, but now they say it will become a big player for import business. So I feel like they're going to start, Alibaba might set up in Newcastle. That might not be, something that might happen in the near future. Just because we've got all these train lines and highways connecting to our port, I have a feeling it's going to become a big shipping container terminal. But it's like how, is there much downside in it being Alibaba opposed to Amazon, like setting up there? Do you reckon?
Well, every cent that goes back to China goes back to the Chinese Communist Party, and the Chinese Communist Party puts more money into their navy, which is set on taking our freedom. Don't buy anything Chinese made. Don't buy any phones. Don't buy any products.
Everything's made in China.
Unless the cheap little things that you can buy that you say.
It's like China and America have a partnership. America's the brand. China will make it. The rest of the world buys it.
Not anymore. They're almost decoupled. They're going to almost totally decouple.
Well, I've heard that America's investing in Vietnam a lot to
the problem is
manufacture.
Vietnam's so small, so nothing can really replace China.
Yeah, okay.
China's the factory of the world, and this is how America became the richest country in the world. It's what you produce. It's products you produce. And this is all connected back to you mentioning manufacturing. So you see, there's an economic term, a comparative advantage. So one way to describe it is, just say back in Europe, there would be the French. They're great at, they would have these great vineries and, vines, and they would create this great wine, and they're really good at it. They made a lot of wine, high quality, and more efficiently than anyone else, right?
Well, yep.
So just say they have 80% of their workforce just making wine.
Or in
and
the
then they
wine
just
industry.
trade with other things. 20% would be on other things that they need, which is kind of like a mercantilist type of economy where you try to be self-sufficient, which you mentioned.
But if no one
before.
wants your wine, okay, so
this is what you mentioned, self-sufficiency, which is getting away from global trade.
Whereas you
the
should
thing
do what
is,
you do best.
What you produce means yes. So what you do best, you just say they slaughter pigs or something, and they make bacon or something with 20% of their workforce, but they're slow compared to say Britain. Just say Britain's really good at that. Or milk. Let's just say milk. That's a good example.
Milk real quick.
But Britain's not so good at making wine. So, they have 20% of their workforce making wine, and they're less productive, and the quality's cheaper. They should put 100% of their workforce into making wine. They should put 100% of their workforce into creating milk, and then they should trade it, and that's comparative advantage, because that just means that that extra bit of productivity is shared, and everybody gets rich because of the extra productivity, and that's comparative advantage, and that goes back to...
The bad thing about this system is, like, right now, when
you're dependent
the
on
whole
them.
world would collapse and ship stop moving, everything, the whole world falls apart. Because,
then you're dependent on them. Yeah, that's exactly the problem with it. But the thing is, if we become self-sufficient, everyone becomes poorer. That's just a fact.
Yeah, right. We
become a lot poorer. And the reason why manufacturing in Australia failed, not to mention we're so far away from everybody, we're right at the very end of the world, we weren't competitive. It's a hard conversation to have. Is
that just because we're late to the game? Like we're one of the most recent,
the most powerful currency, one of the most powerful currencies in the world, the one of the richest countries in Asia for such a long time. We had all the opportunities in the world, but we were not good at it. We never got good at it. The unions destroyed it as well. And any good economist worth their salt knows that the union, when they get their hooks into an industry, they destroy it. Building industry can be dangerous, so therefore I understand the CFMEU. I understand that when it's dangerous, or you're in the mines and you get black lung or something, you have someone protecting the workers, but when it comes to some extent, manufacturing is a lot safer. They're inside, there's air conditioning, they got a lot of protective gear, rail workers and transport workers. Come on, you know what I mean? Like, let's just be realistic. If you're working with steel and things falling from the, and nails flying everywhere,
aluminium,
electricity,
and hot molten,
you could accidentally hit you. It's dangerous. So CFMEU, I get. Every other union is really just ridiculous. They almost destroyed Qantas. The unions. And this is why manufacturing has failed. But also the fact that if Toyota does it faster, better, and more efficient than us, and
you want the best products to buy it off.
So that's why they make it cheaper and they make a better product. What are you going to buy? So we're selling a product that's more expensive, and the unions have got their hooks into it, and we're a bit slower. We're not efficient. So this is the hard conversation.
Because someone needs to put in the hard grounds to set up the manufacturing and then train people, but they're going to be at a loss for a long time.
What happens if you do that and then the unions latch on and destroy the industry and start milking money out of you?
Yeah, okay.
What do you think?
And there's no incentive.
What do you think? They privatise the ferries and the buses and the rail networks next, and everything's going privatised because the unions latch on, and the workers don't understand economics. So union good, we'll send money to them. Union good. I understand construction, high-rise apartments. I understand that. I totally get that. When I started working at 18, I was an apprentice plumber, so I totally understand that. Dangerous. Other things, the union just destroys industries. And if we want to I think self-awareness is something that we need to have. And if we were really that good at manufacturing, it would have worked.
Yeah, okay.
But it was working at a loss for I don't know how many years. I'm sure I could probably figure it out and Google it and find out for you. But that's the hard conversation that needs to be had.
Do we need things? Do we need to make things? We just need food, really.
Comparative advantage. We are an educated bunch in Australia. And hopefully the collapsing of our economy wakes us up to the threats to our domestic economy, and discriminatory trade practices by businesses set up in Australia that have the backing of a $20 trillion economy on our doorstep that has arguably the biggest military in the world already.
So if you're saying we need America, then
we need America, yeah.
Why would they want to help us then? Like, if a $20 million threat, why are they going to help us if they could get fucked on by trying to get involved?
We need them more than they need us. There's countries around the world that would love to have the attention of America and have the protection of America. We've had that protection from the beginning. Even though we
Have we
were
needed it?
yes. So now we get to Indonesia. We haven't even touched on Indonesia.
And they're closer.
And this is why this is part of the, you know, American, they call it American exceptionalism, and I don't know what to call it, Australian delusion. So Indonesia.
Yeah.
Indonesia. So the great delusion of the Australian people that go, that 1 million people go to, on average, go to Indonesia per year.
From Australia, yeah.
And I guess when I first went there, I arrived and I saw all the poor people, and I just thought to myself, wow, this person's really poor. Where's their Medicare? You know, I'm not giving a leftist, humanitarian, like leftist, everyone needs human rights conversation with you about this. What I'm saying is they have so many people that are suffering over there, yet the majority of Australians go there and use the Australian dollar and throw it around. And to some extent, it's exploitation. To some extent. And I'm not making a moral judgment. Don't get me wrong. I'm not making a moral judgment. What I'm saying is that this is a country that's hungry. This is a country that, do you think that poor disabled person sitting there begging, or that
human rights,
or that 16-year-old girl, that the Aussie guy from Newcastle that flies over there and like gives her a couple of dollars,
gets a massage,
things like that. Do you think she's sitting there thinking, you're God, or do you think she's understanding what's really happening, that you're lucky that you come from this country and you have the protection of America, you're lucky that you have an Australian dollar? And I'm not sure if the Australian people understand that, because when you look at where our trade goes, it all goes through Indonesia, you see? And Indonesia is set to be projected to be the 5th largest economy in the world very soon. They've probably just overtaken our economy now. And
so where's all their money then? If all the people are hungry, is their government very corrupt? And
250, almost 220.
Like 10 times more than us.
Yeah, GDP per capita, right? So GDP per capita, 25 million people, you know, our GDP per capita is like 45,000. Over there, I think they're lucky to have 9,000.
Is it true we would have had a lot more because like Saudi Arabia, didn't all their people get a lot of money because of the oil? Like all the people become fairly wealthy because they, you know, struck gold on oil.
Yeah.
I heard we should all per capita have more money because of all the coal that we're sold.
We're lucky. We're already like the luckiest people.
Really
that's why we're so complacent.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We're already rich enough.
Yeah.
See, that's another problem, and that's why we're
people don't see themselves as rich. Everyone still feels like they're struggling, haven't got money.
Well, they're not living in Indonesia, are they?
Well, a lot of people need to travel more. Like, like me and you have done that, obviously. But that's what, like, if Australians travel, they go to Bali,
and people listening to this might think, okay, so there's a punchline coming. There's a punchline coming. And it's not that I'm making a judgment on the people that go there and exploit that. I'm just saying that we're lucky because we have this great, powerful friend that protects the country. How easy would it be to mobilize 220 million Indonesians with a massive military to just go, look, if we just invade these fuckers,
we can have it.
Massive genocide. And
so,
then,
sorry, did you say they've got a bigger... Well, obviously, army, like the numbers.
Numbers-wise, yes.
Technology and stuff, are they... Because they can't feed themselves, are they buying nice
There's a swarm
rockets?
theory. So just say we could have the brand new F-35 from the United States.
Okay. Yeah.
But we got 5 or 6 of them. They have, I don't know,
100,000 little
you just send them you just send these
homemade planes or something,
lower quality planes, and you just get swarmed.
3D printed planes.
Part of the problem is if we have a problem out there and our fighter jets leave and they get stuck
refuel.
They get stuck over there, they return, they don't even make it back.
They don't come back. It's their plane then.
Yeah, just runs out of fuel, or they just keep it busy until it runs out of fuel. And recently we were trying to deliver some aid to Fiji, I believe it was Fiji or Vanuatu recently. But the Chinese Air Force left one of their planes on the runway to prevent us landing. So
The Chinese left their plane.
yes, this is this week. This is this week. So the Australian plane carrying all of these supplies and masks, whatever, for I think Vanuatu, Fiji,
Yeah.
did a few loops and then had to come back, and they almost ran out of fuel because they couldn't land, and the Chinese deliberately didn't allow us to land because that's like a sign. This is our country. What China's trying to do in Fiji, Vanuatu, and that's firstly...
But surely Fiji, do their people know that this happened? Because
They're
surely they
poor-
would not like China for doing that.
Fiji, Vanuatu is just like coconut trees that basically no universities.
Yeah, okay.
They
So it's corrupt. The government's...
They don't know what's going on. That's based off tourism, like North Korea. Like you go to the outback in Australia, do you think they're going to understand what we're talking about?
No,
to some
yeah,
extent,
true,
and they have
yeah.
access to these things too.
Yeah.
But what we have is we have great power politics, and China. First point I wanted to make was the refueling. So with our fighter jets, it's such a large landmass. How can our fighter jets, how limited, no matter how advanced they are, protect this thing? You know, and
Where's our closest base to Indonesia?
well, last year, Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, gave a speech in Indonesia and said, "Look, we don't accept China's influence in this area."
Because of the Darwin port, or it's
There's a
because of
hundred.
everything,
There's
yeah.
100 reasons, right? And then what happened was we started building off Manus Island.
Yeah.
We have a joint naval base that we're building right now, and that is, if you look at Indonesia, it's like just off the top right
above
of
it.
Indonesia. Yeah,
Okay.
and the reason why is to protect our naval trade. Like what I've been talking to you about is, if the Australian people were warned about how dire this situation is and how... Do you think 6 months
Do you
ago...
reckon they could do anything about it, or just cause people to fucking go out and bash Asians? Like,
Well,
you know what Australians are like.
That's the other issue too, because when you start attacking people in your own country, then you give the Chinese Communist Party the propaganda they need,
To start
right?
a war or like,
It's the same issue,
It's hard, isn't it?
but that's why we're building that, to try and protect our maritime trade. Then you have a look at Vanuatu and Fiji. China's putting more money into these countries, and they have been for many years now.
Yeah.
This is a huge threat. All they need to do is...
But is that good for them, for Fiji? Because like you said, we try to land supplies there, and China's like, no, we're going to leave our plane there. Does Fiji care that happened?
No.
Is China donating to them anyway, and they just
No.
don't want Australians, like they don't want a relationship between Fiji and Australia?
Fiji, Vanuatu, Samoa, what they do is they play them off against each other. So they say, Australia, we need some more money. Australia's like, well, we've given you all this money. Why don't you just get a job? and then Fiji, Vanuatu, and Samoa, they go, oh, China, can we have some money? China's like, okay, I'll give you some money. And then they go...
they have a reason, like they might want to put a
because
military base there.
they want a military base. They want to buy one, and they can buy one. And then they go back to Australia and say, look, they're going to build a military base. And then Australia's like, okay, well, I'm sure I got some money under the couch. I'll give you some more money. I'll send you some more stuff. So they're playing us off against each other at our detriment. So a couple thousand people on islands are holding this entire country at ransom. Pisses me off just thinking about it. Makes me so angry. Really does. Just they're playing us off against them. And as soon as China can, and they build a naval base off the coast on the South Pacific of Australia,
south of Australia,
South Pacific, which is the north.
Oh, okay,
northeast.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so it's
in Indonesia area.
You see, Indonesia's the top left,
Yeah,
and the top right is kind of where a lot of our trade goes. And if they can
there's only
set one right
few
there,
islands there, is there?
then next thing you know, you're going up the coast of Australia, and there's guns pointing at you, and they call you, go, where you going? And they go, oh, we're just trading.
Yeah, not
Sorry.
with America, we swear.
Yeah, and that's how they slowly creep down, and they imagine this: you blockade the country with pirates, and Australia's like, China's China's taking all of our trade. China's like, no, we're not taking your trade. They're just disappearing.
Yeah, I'm wondering where.
Like, it's not even a joke. It's serious. Like, it just disappears. So recently, what we've done is the last 6 to 12 months, we have looked at China's allegiance system, right? Firstly, Donald Trump had a go at North Korea. You know, that was well publicized that he tried to de-nuke them.
Yeah.
Tried to, get rid of all the nukes. It failed because China was backing them. China wants them to have nukes, and China wants them, in fact, probably China wants them to drop a nuke on Japan, maybe. They would love that to happen.
Fallout but then come over? Maybe fallout from that?
China doesn't
close
really...
to home.
China is happy to have a virus released within their own country to hurt other countries. There's 1.7 billion people. We know that they shut down their own cities before... They shut down their own cities while allowing more Chinese to fly out.
Okay, yeah.
It was all planned. It's all coming out now.
In Shenzhen, they took it seriously because I've got like friends that still stay at the place I was staying. And this Russian girl, she's in Vietnam.
Yeah,
now.
They took it seriously, but people were still flying out.
Like traveling, like
yeah. So
their government should be like, quarantine here. Yeah, no one should leave the country
because we got a virus.
Yeah.
But what they did was they shut down their own cities and allowed people who were not locals to that city to leave and go wherever they wanted.
Because there was Australians in Wuhan that left, didn't they? Like,
I've got a contact in there still today.
Yeah, but they didn't leave. They quarantined themselves.
Yeah, so they
were letting people not from that city leave.
Yeah, so if you're from Beijing, you can leave. Okay. And if you're from Beijing, they were still allowing people to fly in from Beijing, Singapore, Guangzhou, no doubt, into Sydney. So it didn't really stop. But we had a go at North Korea, right, to try and de-nuke them, right? During that period, the United States built an embassy, a secret embassy in Taiwan. So that was a few years ago.
The United States built an embassy in Taiwan a couple of years ago. Right?
Yeah. So
during that North Korean stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So while everyone's distracted with North Korea Fire and Fury and books are coming out, they built an embassy. And
I didn't hear about that. There you go.
Yeah, but that's how it works, right? Yeah. They distract you with a virus while something else is happening.
Yeah, that's what's going on right now.
Yeah, there's a lot happening right now. And I think partly what we're doing is this is part of a plan. So they built that, right? And then if you have a look at China, China's the factory, Russia's the military, and the fuel comes from Iran. So this is their kind of setup. They're trying to build larger allegiances around the world, but that's the basic setup.
How do you reckon... Oh, sorry, but... How do you reckon China's going with their allegiances at the moment? Like, do you reckon they're in a good position with, like, obviously not with Asia and surrounding countries because of fishing in their waters and whatnot, but like with Africa and other countries, like they've invested lots of money, like in Africa, for instance, like for the Belt and Road and stuff like that. Do you reckon if it was a world war, who would have the majority? Like, would America
China would win.
Yeah, just because they're powerful, or do you reckon they'll have more allies come to there because of what America's done in the past, for instance?
The reason why I say China's such a threat is because I think that they would win. Not only they're destroying every country they're competing so well on an economic standpoint. They're winning,
yeah.
But
they're not like they're celebrating about it. Or they're not like. They're not showing off and going...
Yeah, they are. They've been showing off for a very, very long time. Xi Jinping brought out Made in China 2025. That was his plan. And that would be... They have the most advanced technologies in the world, and they produce they open up all the markets around the world, and they become the richest country in the world by far and dominate every industry by 2025. He openly said that, which was kind of a mistake because the United States was like, hang on, but we got the fangs. and Xi Jinping
I
is
read
actually
it. I didn't read a
replacing
book.
Google. It's all been replaced. Google's replaced with Baidu. Apple's been replaced with Huawei. They're replacing
Or
everything.
Xiaomi. But like with that FANG thing you just mentioned, I saw a book in China that was called FANG, and it stands for like Facebook, Amazon,
Yeah,
Microsoft,
yeah. That's it. Yeah.
or Netflix, sorry, Google. But yeah, the book was like, it just had FANG on it, and it was all in Chinese writing. But I'm just like, I wish I could read that book. You know what I mean? Like to see what they're saying about these companies. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're replacing them all. Like even YouTube, YouTube, they got Youku. They have a replacement for every Twitter. They got, they got Weibo.
Like, in a way, I think some of these, like everyone says that they copied the West. I have a feeling that these Chinese people are pretty smart. Like I reckon we could have copied some of their technology, like some of their apps and whatnot.
It takes a long time to develop something relatively simple. So, for instance, the first iPhone, what went into that? Steve Jobs is seen as a legend for a reason, right?
Thousands of people.
To have a screen that you push buttons that they're not even buttons, like created screens.
Yeah, the touch, the sense. Yeah.
This is next level stuff when all you have to do is copy paste, reverse engineer it over there, and you just leaped all of that investment. Trillions of dollars of investment and like 100 years of government
subsidies and work.
Like they spent money on technologies, and they'll take a little bit from here, a little bit from there. Like
because China doesn't care about patents.
They're
so advanced because they just they're not suing each other over intellectual property.
A lot of it was stolen. A lot of it, that's what I'm trying to get at, is a lot of it was stolen, and it's still being stolen today. So, for instance, Google, Baidu, they created Baidu. Where do you think they got the code from? They literally
Baidu copied Google.
They allowed Google in. I don't know how long for. They allowed Google into China, but it was a planned move. And as soon as it went
to watch how they work and how.
They allowed it in, and as soon as Google went on the servers in China, they stole the code and then kicked them out and created Baidu.
Hectic.
Where do you think it came from? They stole it from Google, and they've been doing that forever with everything.
The way I think, I'm just like, no, China's too smart for that. So I think that Baidu would be first, and Google would have copied them. But the media's got so much influence to, it's true. They got so much influence to make us believe that Google could.
Well, it's factually incorrect because all this technology has come from the West. You see, that's China's like propaganda.
But why are they winning in tech? Like if it's a West
cheap labor, the manufacturing's gone there.
But like all the big companies are now moving to Shenzhen as well. Like even American companies.
So manufacturing,
just
cheap labor, cheap labor.
Just 'cause it's like a sensible move for the company.
The vast majority of Chinese people are still poor.
A lot of them, but they like Apple. Like, I noticed that a lot of them using Apple phones.
Yeah.
So they're not like, they do help each other out financially, but it's not like they're patriotic to Xiaomi or Huawei or.
We use the example.
They're influenced heavily by America.
To some extent, yeah, but it's changing. It's changing. So we use the example of Australian manufacturing kind of collapsing because of comparative advantage. If Toyota can do it better, cheaper, higher quality, why would you buy a more expensive, lower quality thing that just doesn't work as well? Why would you do that? You just wouldn't do it. Comparative advantage. If everything that America is doing today, China is copying and competing in those markets.
And quicker at it. Or
this entire global trade system that America created will work against America, and America will become poor. Did you think about it that way? I don't think many people thought about that. This is
what brand?
Brand doesn't mean nothing, dude. Brand. What's a brand? A label?
Yeah.
I don't care what brand it is, as long as it works. It's the best product, and it's the cheapest.
I'm the same, like white label.
Where do you think a brand comes from in the first place? High quality and cheap. Cheaper and higher, the highest quality, of course, and then obviously competitive. So if Huawei can now make better phones than Apple,
but it's not about that now. Like, people are so influenced by the media. Like, if you get LeBron to carry a Xiaomi phone or something, that's enough to influence people to want a Xiaomi phone. it's like, who have you got rooting for each brand, and like,
And if it costs less to produce it, then your overheads are lower. Then you make more money anyway. Then you can spend on marketing as well. But your marketing, to some extent, you still need the best product.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, Apple didn't used to be the best product.
Nokia went under. They were the most popular. Even today, I remember. I think I can't wait for a new Nokia to come out. I want a BlackBerry or a Nokia. Why did they lose out? Because people want the next best thing. They don't really care about the brand. The brand is made from the quality.
But do you reckon people will go back to the flip phone soon? Like, instead of this, the touchscreen smartphone.
But would they? Would they? No, they wouldn't.
No?
And it's been proven that they don't want to.
Well, no, they're only just come. Like, Motorola's back in the game now, and they've got flip phones again with like dual, touch screen. It's still a touch screen.
Still touch screen. So it's a new version, right? It's the new best thing, and they're trying to make it unique.
But Nokia could come back if they just, it's all about it's design.
But they still need to compete. They can't bring out the old 1999 version.
Well, they can for drug dealers.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that technology, and advanced technology wins. That's where where iPhone came from, right? It was like the next best thing. No one knew what iPhone was when it was being launched, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then it became the next big thing. Everybody
standard.
Everyone had a BlackBerry and a Nokia back then. And then this thing came out and they're like, wow, I got to buy that.
Yeah,
the brand doesn't mean shit. The brand becomes that afterwards, So even
China will just bring out new products and it's like, doesn't matter what it's called, what it is. You'll see it, like, fuck, I need that. And then...
Well, the specs speak for themselves.
Yeah, true.
If it's faster, better. Look at 5G.
That's why I bought a Samsung, man, because, like, back in the day, like, when comparative to the Apple that was on the market, Samsung was the better phone.
Yeah.
But everyone's like, no, Apple's the best.
So that's kind of how it is. And so comparative advantage wise, what advantage does the United States have if China's moving into all of their markets?
Yeah.
America has no choice but to, burn up this.
But what about with technology coming so far with 3D printing and everything? Now countries can essentially make everything in-house anyway because the machines do all the work. They're just too ahead and set up.
Like it takes time to set this up. Like you mentioned Vietnam.
Well, what is 10 years, man? Or 15 years it's only taken to grow that.
With a communist country that forces people and as we discussed before, people that focus on money, like you try get 100,000 Aussies to go and do the snowy, what is it, the
snowy hydro thing.
Snowy hydro thing again. Good luck with that, especially when the football's on. Like, and that's actually sad for me to say, because the Chinese people, it doesn't matter what's on, because they're doing it for China, right?
That's a mindset,
that mindset you cannot compete with.
But we just need to be prepared with our government and legislation that they put forward. Because their mindset will take over if we don't, if we're complacent and don't do anything.
Well, I hate to be, so negative, but it's already too late. Because when I was first warning about this, it was so now I also have to mention, because we were talking about North Korea, right?
Yeah.
I got to go back to that. We're talking about North Korea and then Taiwan, and so last year we mentioned the Manus Island base that was built. And now I tie that in with...
That's the Australian-American one,
base of Indonesia. Then I tie it all in with what happened in the late months of last year, where we started preparing for Iran. And I mentioned piracy before to you. Okay, so the Australian Navy late last year went to Iran and set up in the Strait of Hormuz. Have you heard of the Strait of Hormuz and all the problem over there?
No.
The Strait of Hormuz is like an area where most of the oil in the world travels through.
Okay.
And the United States.
Water passage.
Yes, and it's near
Who's
Iran.
it owned by? Or
Iran pretty much controls that area, but aircraft carriers, United States aircraft carriers are there right now and have been there for over 6 months now. The Australian Navy's over there, the British Navy, and they've been there for like 6 months now. And what they started doing was commandeering Iranian oil tankers.
Commandeering, sorry, is that when you board them?
You have a helicopter over the top, and all of your like SWAT team go from the top,
hopping ropes
with
and
machine guns and
Yeah.
commandeer, and then drive it back and take it. Like literally just take it and send all
Grand Theft Auto on the water.
Pretty much, yeah. And that's how international politics is. Would you like to be Australia with all of our resources going out being commandeered by China and us just becoming poor, or would you rather be the commandeerer? Right? And so this is what we're in really a fight for our lives. And so we're over there trying to control this waterway. And then you start to look at what recently happened with the virus. And I dare say that...
That's just to take attention away while this...
Well, the virus is real. The virus is real, but I dare say that what we did was we deliberately collapsed our economy to use that as a good excuse to lessen the products leaving China, export, so they can have less access to US dollars, because they're an exporting nation. It hurts them more.
Dollars, yeah.
And hopefully, if we can damage them from within, we're pinching them with Iran by, this block.
The oil and that,
there's a blockade going on over there right now, right? There's a kind of a battle between Saudi Arabia and Russia going on, so they're still pumping out a lot of oil, so the oil price has fallen as well. That was already kind of happening, but also we have OPEC not really reducing the amount of oil being produced. So there's kind of an economic war of attrition between Saudi Arabia and Russia happening. So whoever runs out of money first wins, or loses. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the same. What's happening over there, but also by shutting everything down, we reduce the amount of products in the system. So therefore, there's more money and less products. So therefore, there's a possibility of inflation. The United States is in over $25 trillion in debt. So if we increase inflation, they can pay that back faster. I know a lot of people talk about the United States not paying back the taxes, their debt, and going into some sort of austerity. They're just going to print their way through. But if they can get some inflation happening, that could solve a lot of problems for them. Another option, another reason why this works. So when you grab the way I look at the world and you look at what's happening right now, it fits.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It fits. The port, Newcastle Port, Port of Darwin, China owns ports everywhere, right? And what the conversation is at the moment is that the virus has destroyed our economy, so therefore we need China to pay for the damages. One way we can get them to pay for the damages is seize the port. So the Port of Darwin, the Port of Newcastle right here, we can actually probably just take this back as payment for China inflicting this virus and collapsing the global economy. So
who owns the port in... It's not the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah,
it's just a private company, is it?
They're businesses that are owned by the Chinese Communist Party. So this is part of the One Belt, One Road initiative. So they're businesses set up by them, and they're controlled by the state. And that's the same way how, if you have a look at Italy got smashed with the virus, right? They had a huge issue. They were one of the first Western countries. They made a deal with China to be their gateway into Europe. So all of the products from China were going through Italy, and so you can imagine why the virus hit them first, right? Yeah. That's why. They also in Greece, the Port of Piraeus. I'm not sure how useful it is, but what happened was they loaned money to Greece. Greece defaulted, so they took the port. So now they own all these ports in Europe. Sri Lanka, which is a little island off the coast of India. So so if you look at China and you go through the Malacca Straits, this port is... Port of Colombo is prime location if you're going to get to Africa and go that way, right? Yeah. So Sri Lanka defaulted on their debts. What did they take? 99-year lease on the Port of Colombo in Sri Lanka. So you can see how
they've got 99-year leases on ports.
Yeah, and it's all part of their plan to made in China 2025 using the Navy. Now you see, while we're all suffering right now, we've all got this virus and the economy's shut down. What's
no footy?
What's the possibility of China making more moves, right? And they're kind of doing that already. Now, I haven't really touched too much on Indonesia, but when you tie Indonesia as a factor into what we need to worry about as Australians, they have been balancing our military for many years, and we might have some, some technology that they don't have, right? Because we have access to the United States, but they've been balancing us. So where were we?
We were talking about
Indonesia.
Yeah.
Indonesia. Yeah. Hugh White, he wrote the 2000 white paper for Australia.
What's a white paper?
A white paper is kind of a plan on what threats we have in the region and how we should balance them, what we need to do, suggestions on what we could do, options on
what year did he?
2000. He was the
okay.
author of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of other people worked on it as well. And last year, he wrote a book called, this is Hugh Wright, the How to Defend Australia. And he does. He mentions Indonesia as a threat, and how we need to engage more with Indonesia, and how they're set to be the fifth largest economy, which means they're going to be wealthier than us. They're going to have a strategic advantage over us because we need to go through them.
So they will be wealthier per person, or just their
country will just be wealthier as.
So we won't see Indonesians coming to Australia to have sex with our women because they won't have that much money. Depends how poor we get.
If we get blockaded, you will literally see a shift overnight.
Really?
Yeah. We only have enough oil in this country, as you mentioned before, being self-sufficient. The oil comes from, say, the Middle East as an example.
Refine it.
Then it needs to be refined. Yeah. And we only have enough for 20, 30 days. So after 20, 30 days, what do? We
breed horses.
We create sticks and we go back to the bush and we're hunting with bow and arrows and stuff like that. You can't drive to work anymore. Yeah, like that. This is part of the, But Hugh White argues that to defend ourselves, there's a possibility he suggests somewhere along the book, and it's my favorite part, obviously, because I think that this is the best option.
Spoiler alert.
Have nuclear weapons.
We should have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and have a mutually assured destruction deterrent, so that if you start taking our ships, our billions of dollars worth of coal and iron ore and all of our resources start disappearing, when our sailors, they all start disappearing, we
need something big to fight back.
We could nuke you as a deterrent, so don't mess with us.
What's to stop them getting a nuke then? No.
Mutually assured destruction, that's mad. That means that they nuke us too.
Really? Yeah, so that's best if everyone has a nuke, because everyone's like, we can't fuck with them because they could kill us. And
yeah. So piracy is still a serious thing, though.
Yeah.
Would you nuke someone if you get blockaded? And that's a question, like, who's got their finger on the trigger? To North Korea, to some extent, is blockaded. They haven't nuked anyone. So when you think about it, is it even a deterrent at all?
Yeah,
you still need to have the Navy to control. It's called sea control. You need to control the area en masse. And Australia just cannot do that.
Because we're an island, got too much water around.
We're an aging demographic compared to Indonesia. So generally we're an older population. If you have a look at Indonesia, 220 million people, they're on average like in their 20s or 30s. And if it's so poor, when you get a little bit old and you don't have Medicare, they don't have the infrastructure to keep people alive either. So therefore they have a younger demographic. There's always going to be younger. Working population and more workers. So if they need to... they need to manufacture. They've got the people for it. They need to work. So therefore, their economy.
How's the relationship between China and Indonesia? Like, are they on good terms? Or
Recently, Chinese fishing vessels have gone into Indonesian waters. There's an island called Katuna. Natuna, sorry. Natuna or Katuna. It's off
we'll
the
put it
coast
up
of
on the screen.
Indonesia. The fishing vessels, see, this is how it works. China's taken the South China Sea and the 9-line. They pretty much own all that sea. They're still expanding outside of the 9-line to fish into your waters.
So they've got control of all their waters, plus they're going outside of theirs.
Yeah, there's no rules, and if you go down to the Chinese person in the street, there's no rules with them either. The government is made up of the people, and this is something that people, don't. This is why our government's so naive and blind and makes stupid decisions, because the Australian people can't get their shit together and say, look, this is more important than that. We should focus on that.
Isn't it the Chinese party? They don't listen to people anyway, isn't it? Whatever they say goes.
This is the argument that people put forward, but if you got a lot of nationalists, and China has a lot of people who believe in China. If you think about it, if China rises, everyone in that country gets rich. It's in their best interest. They see it as a united thing for them to do. So, for instance, internet trolls, just as one example, internet trolls get online and harass people that say bad things about China in our country. In our country. They're doing it for free. Yeah. The vast majority are doing it for free. Their hobby is defending China online.
Are they?
Do Australians do that?
Paid by it?
In the beginning, they called them the 50-cent army, the Wu Maos. But now,
are they in China doing this from computers in
factories?
China?
Yeah, sure. But there's a large percentage of them that are doing it for free.
Just because they're...
Fact. Because they believe in the cause. They want the country to rise the same way in the past, when Australia actually cared about its own people and the Australian people actually believed in something and actually stood for something, people would put their spare time towards the cause. I think I'm one of the few out there that do that.
Still would, yeah.
I've spent, thousands of hours on this with little to no reward, but if everyone did what I was doing and listened to new ideas and talked about this, the government would get the policies they need, and we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. But the Chinese people, they're all out there constantly talking about this. They're constantly fighting for China, and it makes sense. This is why I see China...
if you're out in the street in China, their average conversation, or the average people in the street, might be talking about how they're going to move to Australia one day and live there, or not talking about the footy, or like...
The Chinese people see the Chinese people see the Australian people as stupid. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. I think Lee Kuan Yew labelled us the white trash of Asia. This was a long time ago, but the Chinese people see us as naive, stupid, alcoholics, violent, rapists. You name it. That's what we are.
Everything bad.
We're everything bad. We're the bogans. This is what they genuinely believe. And once they arrive, it cements even more, because in China, you can't get away with all the stuff you can get away with in Australia. And we don't even monitor them.
Yeah.
ASIO can't keep up with this. In fact, when I started uploading videos, ASIO was looking for the Muslims that are going to take over. They're going to blow something up.
And they're the enemy.
They're going to blow something up. And next thing you know, you got some Aussies shooting up a mosque, right? And then that changed things a little bit. That insulted the Indonesians, by the way. We can't win. But they got the largest Muslim population on our doorstep that saw that. You think they're going to forget about that? Yeah, they're not going to forget about that. But only recently we started talking about China. It's like can't
the
focus.
It's been focused on like Iran and Syria and like
terrorism.
Yeah, terrorism.
All these other things, because the Australian people can't think for themselves. That's the issue. The issue, it's thinking logically, and this is why when I identified China as a threat, if I saw the media, it's like China good. China awesome. You say anything bad about China, you're a racist.
The media's doing that.
The media is
Yeah.
the problem.
Okay.
Yeah, our funded.
Because I never watch the news or anything. So, like, I wouldn't know if, like, 7 News is talking shit on China. Like, 'cause I literally get
They
most
all
of my stuff
are
from
now.
YouTube and
They all are now. They're all talking now, but
They are, yeah.
they should have started back in 2014.
so they've been now since the virus. They've been pointing the blame at China or like.
The last, say, 12 months or longer,
Okay,
they're
so
becoming
before that.
a little bit more aware. But since the virus kicked in, it's all guns blazing.
Yeah.
But before that, when I was making videos in the beginning, it was just Muslims bad. They're going to blow us up. And you look at it, you think, okay, well, but the Muslims in Australia, they come from third world countries mostly. They're poor. They live in poor suburbs. Economically, they're not a threat. Demographically, there's not enough of them to be a threat. It just didn't make sense to me.
Okay.
And then you have some of the richest
But people
suburbs.
like, they get the fear comes from they haven't got anything, so they want to blow us up and take what we've got, or, you know.
I fear... I get it, but I fear a wealthy man with connections to the police that can have me locked up and connections to politicians than a poor person, because all I need to do is stay away from the poor person. They'll run out of food and they'll have to get a job.
Yeah.
But a rich
But
person,
it's dangerous. A poor person, if someone has nothing, can be dangerous, you know.
yeah, just stay away from them.
Yeah.
There's danger everywhere, and there's levels of danger, right? There's I get it, a poor person, but if you actually go speak to homeless people, they're more scared than anyone else. They're living in poverty. They're less likely. A lot of them do commit crimes because they actually go
I reckon
crazy.
you're right. A lot of them they just sit there and.
But
try and
wealthy
survive,
people
right?
that can coordinate a military and can take your job and have you put in jail. Chinese people in Sydney, if you even argue with them, they forget that they're not in China. They actually think,
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
do what I tell you to do, you white trash. Or I'll call the police. I'm like, hey, we're not in China yet. You can't put me in a concentration camp yet.
Yeah.
And they're like, soon I will.
Yes.
You know. But it's not even a joke.
Soon.
It's not even a joke. I've had this happen to me many times because I'm out there. I'm out there
So that's
testing
what I
these
should
things.
touch on too. Is do you ever get worried about what you're doing because of the attention? You know, you're bringing like all the stuff you sell in China.
Well, when
needs to be said, but
yeah. Well, I come to the conclusion I'm trying to wake up a small minority of human beings on a large, very important country called Australia that have forgotten their way in the world. They're a minority. They're weak. They're a bit blind to what's going on. And I'm one of the few people that will get killed eventually. So I've come to that realization. Like
you'll go down in history as the guy who woke Australia up.
Not
about
really.
it.
Not really. It's I don't think
YouTube
I've...
history then.
Yeah, maybe. And then YouTube disappears. But at least when it comes to thinking about your life and what did you stand for, even if it all ends, I'll still believe that I did my best.
Yeah.
And I have done my best. I've worked so hard on this for no pay. So I've done my best, I feel, and yes, they do want to have people like me disappear. That's a fact. Like if I was to say anything like this in China, I would disappear.
Are you worried to go back to China?
Oh, I can never go back to China. What a ridiculous
After
thing to
this?
say.
Yeah.
What a ridiculous... If I went to China, I would disappear on arrival. Come on.
Fuck, yeah.
Of course. I don't think even Hong Kong would be safe for me because all I need is a CCP member to accidentally drop something on me or...
And it's so hard over there. Like everywhere, I don't know about, like in Shenzhen anyway, every corner's got a camera on it. Like they're watching everything you
Facial
do.
recognition
Yeah,
in China,
no.
they've got the social credit system. So
is
they
that-
know everywhere you go,
What you
everything you buy.
I feel like that's coming here.
Part of the problem is the Australian people haven't fought for their own country enough. And if this country starts to suffer and decline comparatively to other countries, the government has to become... If the government wants to protect the country...
They need to bring up the surveillance.
It has to become more authoritarian and tell you what to do. Because if you're sitting there watching the footy all day thinking that you can just ignore this and be complacent forever, you're eventually going to be slapped in the face with reality. And kind of this
We already
shutdown,
are getting slapped in the face.
this shutdown was the slap in
Yeah.
the face that we needed, but it wasn't a death blow. It was a slap in the face, and it was time to start listening to new ideas. Like people like me, I've got a lot of ideas. I could probably talk for a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it's
Everyone
time
can
to
go onto
take
your
on,
channel and have a look. Like,
it's time to take on some new ideas and to start thinking about this a little bit more and think, oh, maybe this, maybe China is a threat, or maybe we should start looking at our tax system. Maybe we should
but
look
just
at
need to
Chinese
talk
business.
about it. Like,
Yeah,
needs
and
to
have an
speak
open
out.
discussion, and that's not what happened in Wagga Wagga Council. They tried to silence this guy. I actually made a video when it was disgusting to see. They're like, you're racist and xenophobic for mentioning the Chinese Communist Party wanting to take masks from the Australian people. How
No,
does
just
that even
facts.
connect?
Yeah.
How does it even
But
connect?
why did that happen? Like, why? Like, can't they just make more in China? Like, why did they take masks from us? Like,
Well, the theory is, if you think about it, they manufacture these things. They had a crisis.
so they just needed them back because they needed them.
No, if you look at the timeline, which I have, the virus started spreading in China. Then they shut down all Chinese cities while allowing Chinese people to visit our country and bring the virus in and tell us that it's racist for not allowing them to come in, which seems pretty orchestrated to me. While in the early or late January, I uploaded my video January 20th, I believe. January 29th, they were requesting masks from the council. So every single person in China was requesting masks from everywhere possible all around the world.
Okay.
And if they were to deplete our resources while spreading the virus, that would cause us more harm. It seems like it was a coordinated effort to actually kill as many foreigners as possible. I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but if you look at it,
because my mate in China was in late January, maybe. He was asking me what the price of masks are, those N95 masks in local shops. Like, why do you want to know that? But yeah, that was early January, so they must have been looking everywhere to buy them for their own country, or maybe in their country the prices just skyrocketed. So it's sort of like the Daigou stuff. Maybe that's why they'll send all the masks back, because it's just cheaper. Then maybe the price in China become so high.
supply and demand.
Yeah, because
to
if
some
they
extent.
if they had to shut down work and stuff, they maybe couldn't make any more masks. So maybe they did need to get them back,
But yeah, to request it from other countries
yeah,
for free.
especially if you've just sent people to that country. Like,
China is now going to other countries and sending humanitarian aid, but you have to
you
pay
open
them.
the box of mask and there's a virus in
But you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
So there's no aid. China is
It's not aid.
is not a. They're an.
Do they donate?
I don't really know.
Well, they
whether
have.
they-
They've upgraded the rail system, but that's just long-term beneficial for them. And
That's
like
not
the
a
Belt and Road.
donation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not.
that's Belt and
But
Road.
in
That's a
short
geopolitical
term-
play. That's-
Short term for a country like Greece or someone, that is a donation. You know what I mean?
all those third
But
world
not
countries
long-term.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they will.
So it's like,
They're-
how do you see it at the time?
They're
Is it-
buying land, so really it's not a donation. They're taking land
Yeah.
from, Pakistan, which is on the border of China. Pakistan's part of the Belt and Road Initiative. It goes through there, right?
Yeah.
Goes up towards Iran. Pakistan is now Chinese. They've
Yeah.
just put so many Chinese in the country that Pakistan's China.
Yeah, right.
That's not a donation. That's a colony. And what they do is they say, we're going to build you something. We're going to pay for you to have some new roads. You think, oh well, I need some new roads, but you got to pay us back. And in the contract, everybody,
Yeah, it'd be a fine print to say we
everybody
own
that
these roads or something. You
well,
can use
well, it's
them
not that. It's not that. It's we have to use this company that's a Chinese company. So we are going to pay. It's like in Australia, whenever we have a recession or a downturn, the government still builds roads and creates jobs,
Yeah.
right? So
Keep
they're
moving.
creating jobs externally for geopolitical purposes, and the money goes into Chinese businesses. And so the local people, they just sit there and go, okay, we've got a road so you can go through my country, and we get nothing, and then we have to pay you back for the privilege.
Exactly the same as the
And then
port
they
of
end up
Newcastle.
they end up owning the road in your country, and you don't even use it, because what are you using it for? It's only to get trade from there to there so they can get more rich. So really, they're not a responsible global citizen, China, in any way. In any way. It's all one-sided
It's just about
trade,
them, yeah.
debt trap diplomacy, humanity. If they treat their own people that bad, shooting you in the head is even less of a problem. You know what I mean?
White. Yeah.
Well, you're not even Chinese, right? If they treat their own people that bad, how do you think they treat foreigners? Like
two
the
bullets.
Africans, Africans in China, how they're being treated right now. They're all being evicted, and they have to be tested like all the time. They're not allowed
Tested how?
for the virus.
Okay.
They're being evicted from certain areas. They're not allowed in certain places. They're not allowed in any restaurant, cafe, nightclub, anything that's open. They're not allowed anymore.
So
There's
it's
even
only black
signs
people
up.
at the moment. So if I
And
was there,
foreigners.
okay.
So if you're there, you'll be
you're not
mistreated as well.
Chinese.
If you're treated, but the black people, I've seen videos recently of them evicting entire unit blocks in Guangzhou, where there's an African population.
Yeah.
Just evicting them, kicking them out. If we did that to Chinese people here, it would be an uproar.
Yeah.
It would be international news. Why isn't it not international news with the Africans? Because your value in the world is predicated on how powerful your country is. China is now the most powerful country in the world, so you do anything to a China, you even wink at one, they're like, racism, world news. You can take away black people's human rights, but if they come from like a poor country like Africa or whatever, nobody cares, because your human rights go up with the power of your country. And the Australian people need to be aware that we need to protect this country and fight for it.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be that shit football team that always gets the wooden spoon? Because that's where we're going. I'm trying to,
Make a footy terms.
make a metaphor for the Aussies to get it. It's like, I know the Sharks eventually won. I get it. But for, decades, they were getting the wooden spoon. Do you want to do that? Do you really want to live like that?
Sharks.
It's an awful way to live. Really is. Getting the wooden spoon every year. And that's where we're headed unless we make sure we got a good coach. Let's put the metaphors together, right? The team needs to understand that we need to score goals,
Good coach. We need a referee.
Stop, stop taking drugs and, hookers on the weekend and distracting from playing football.
That's culture. It's hard to compete with different culture when it's so different. But it's like, why did they become so focused on being? Because
they were poor. They became
they
poor.
were poor.
It's in their culture. Like if you go
waves,
well, not really. Like Chinese New Year. Everything about Chinese New Year is about money. So, for instance, Chinese New Year, dumplings. What is a dumpling? A dumpling is shaped like a silver ingot, which was Chinese money. So every time you eat a dumpling on Chinese New Year, the more you eat during Chinese New Year, the richer you will become in the coming year. Fish, you have deep fried fish. You don't have anything white, right? Because it sounds like something that's bad or whatever. But fish, sounds like money or wealth. Like everything about Chinese New Year is, okay, I need
celebrate wealth and
I'm going to get rich if I eat this, or if I do this in a certain way, I'm going to get rich. They don't really care about anything else. It's all about money. So it's embedded in their culture. In Australia, it's probably like, I don't know, how many beers can you have this weekend? And that's not good for the economy, right? So that's one aspect. Another aspect is that they became poor and that they have this 100-year marathon. They had the 100 years of humiliation, which the British caused, and now they're getting back on top. So they have a goal.
It's revenge.
So the Australian people don't have a goal.
Because we haven't lost. We haven't anything to prove yet.
Too complacent, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think this collapse might be this
in a way.
artificial collapse. More Australians than ever before have been speaking to me about, how can I make money? I need to make some more money online. I need to do this.
Yeah, so they're actually
I'm
thinking instead of
wow,
just their day job.
This is my type of conversation.
Yeah.
When usually it drifts off into other things, I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't know. I'm talking. I'd rather focus on other things because the country's in trouble. I want to focus on these things. But I think the Australian people, this is the slap in the face that we kind of needed, and maybe in the short to long term, more people will become a bit more entrepreneurial. They'll understand money a bit better, start looking after money.
Everyone's at home now watching Gary V, so it's certain to happen.
I hope so. Yeah, Gary V will be,
He'll come out on top.
So hopefully, and a lot of businesses also will realise that they can be leaner and meaner by having their workers at home as well.
So they're not paying on rent, office rent, or
maybe they can reduce their office
people
space.
Will go back to work if once the companies have
I think
found
it will
out
change.
that it's
I think it will change. Things will change. Like maybe you get paid more to set up an office at home. All these other options might be available because we've just realised, like some of the banks, 50% of all employees are working from home now.
And
now, do they really need $1 billion
building,
massive,
space,
massive skyscraper in the city? Do they really need that?
Home.
They don't really. If they could possibly have some more people working from home as well. So I think a lot of opportunities will come from this, and the waking up to China, and we can use this to take back assets.
Well, we should definitely, from this point, make it more expensive for them to buy property, more expensive to study.
Citizenship is worth $5 million.
And the thing is,
minimum,
a lot of them will be able to pay that because there's so many millionaires in China.
And that can go into subsidising properties for Australians that were born here, care about the Anzacs, cared for... People didn't die for nothing. And that's the way Australians are treating it right now. Like, for instance, my uncle didn't fight in Vietnam for this. You know? He didn't fight so that people can just like shit on this country and allow the enemy in.
Yeah.
Because that war with Vietnam was against China, by the way. That was against communism, but the West became weak. We allowed them to win that, because we pulled our finger off. Now, they remember that, and they're looking at us, and they're thinking, this is our chance to get you. So I've got to go. I've actually got another one of these at 7 tonight.
Nice, man.
Yeah, I'm doing a few. That's why I was like, I can do this. I've been meaning to do it for how long?
Yeah. Well, so what? I'm just like, never got money, always got to be working or shit on. But it's good that, because when you said I can do it Wednesday, I try to move work around it because I'm like, fuck yeah, podcast.
Let's do it, yeah.
I was like, work's first. You need money, mate. You need it, I was like, that's true. Yeah, thanks for being on the show, Dave.
No, yeah,
if anyone watching wants to check out his channel, it's Dave Lee, but search Dave Lee China because there's someone else that'll pop up that does stupid tech reviews, and that's not the one you want. Yeah. It's not even Aussie. He's a Canadian, not Aussie, or something. Canadian or something. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and hopefully you guys learnt something here, and you can speak to family or friends. Maybe in 6 months' time, maybe something will pop up from here, and and someone
it sticks.
And it's going to help someone out, and it's good to talk about it. All right. Well, thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Bye.